Ideologies are present in all films. Ideologies are a system of ideas and beliefs that are present in a society. These help to define values in society and allows judgment to be passed on what is deemed appropriate or inappropriate. Institutional context relates to media institutions that produce narratives which can be influenced by ideologies and how the narrative abides to these social ideologies. Audience refers to how a particular group views media depending on what they're influenced by. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho in 1960 is a horror film that displays ideologies representative of the time period of genderism and transphobia. Jordan Peele's horror film Get Out displays ideologies present within its 2017 release of racism and post-racialism. In 1960, in the United States, the country was still in the midst of the economic boom after World War II. Due to the population dip after World War II, Americans were highly encouraged to raise the population through new families. This led to the introduction of the society ideal of a domestic household, particularly of a stay-at-home wife with a working husband. Women were expected to take care of at-home matters and were frowned upon if they did not meet this particular lifestyle of a stay-at-home mother. At the same time, the film industry was in the midst of dealing with the Hays Production Code. As such, Hitchcock had to abide by this code if he didn't want to face a $25,000 fine, as well as risk the film not being picked up due to failing the code. Hitchcock's Psycho was highly controversial for its release in 1960. Audiences of the time consumed Psycho in the particular way Hitchcock wanted. As there was no social media or internet, Hitchcock was able to keep the mystery of the film a surprise. Through advertising by stating that theatres won't admit patrons after the film had started and condemning sharing the ending with peers, Hitchcock was able to build the suspense, shock and horror of the film, which built the engagement for the audience. Also, due to this, the audience was only able to see the film in theatres, meaning that compared to modern day audiences, their reception context also built the suspense due to the immersion of a theatre compared to watching it at home with family. Due to the time period, audiences were not used to a realistic horror film that was not obvious fiction like Frankenstein. This also changed the way the audience viewed it, as it was terrifying for its time, as it was based on the real serial killer, Ed Gein, and included shocking, explicit murder scenes. Whereas modern audience are used to realistic horror movies and the shocking murder scenes are duller due to horror films including more graphic content. The dominant overarching ideology present in 1960 was conservatism. From this, genderism and transphobia are ideologies that are confirmed in Psycho. Characters of Marion Crane and Norman Bates are shaped by these ideologies. Marion very much follows the archetype of a woman of the time. Her goal is to marry Sam Loomis, which she abides to, a common goal of a woman of the time due to what was expected of a woman. This is therefore relatable to the audience as it follows the social normatives of the time. Norman is villainized through his feminine characteristics, and the film even goes as far to base his mental illness off schizophrenia and split personality disorder of his cross-dressing. This was accurate to how people viewed transgenderism at this time. Often people feared it, and thus the film abides by this social convention. Psycho was produced by Shamley Productions, which was created by Alfred Hitchcock. Due to the film barely passing the Hays Code, many production companies were fearful to produce such a risky film. Hitchcock decided to produce Psycho on a low budget and in black and white. The production only cost around $800,000 USD to produce, as Hitchcock wasn't sure how the film would do with the code and controversial nature. The film was also produced in black and white so that scenes such as the shower scene with blood was less confronting, as the blood wasn't as gory in black and white. As Hitchcock was well known, the film did surprisingly well once distributed by Universal Studios. However, it was a long back and forth editing process with abiding to the code that meant that the film was at risk as it didn't abide to conservative ideologies. Marion Crane, in the first scene of the film, is shown talking to her lover Sam. She states, "We can see each other, we can even have dinner, but respectably in my house with my mother's picture on the mantel and my sister helping me broil a big steak for 3. Hitchcock here, right off the bat, abides to the ideology of genderism through stating Marion's want of conforming to society through marrying Sam. Through the word respectably, Hitchcock is stating that he agrees with this convention of marriage in society and expresses that what they're doing now of intimacy without marriage is sinful and not respectable. Hitchcock is also expressing this ideology through expressing that women are to be viewed sexually. Hitchcock does this through mise-en-scene in costuming. Marion is shown shirtless twice in the first 11 minutes of the film. Hitchcock early in the film expresses that women are sexual beings which are to be lust after through this costuming and presenting Marion as in a sexual light to the audience. This is supported later in the film when Norman lusts after Marion through watching her change as well. Norman Bates at the climax of the film is shown dressed as his mother trying to murder Lila Crane. Later in the scene, the doctor explains how Norman has a mental illness and as such dresses as his mother. Hitchcock uses the transphobic values of the time to generate fear within the audience. As transgenderism was a concept society didn't understand or accept, it was feared. Through linking cross-dressing to mental illness, Hitchcock abides to the ideology of transphobia by villainizing it. Get Out was created and produced during Obama's presidency. At the time, due to his presidency, Americans believed that they lived in a post-racial society as they had a black president. But Jordan Peele wanted to highlight that the United States still had issues with racism through his film. Jordan Peele claimed that it was a unifying experience as he was able to relate to all people regardless of skin color through creating fear and hope for Chris's character despite the victim being black and the villain being white. Jordan Peele even changed his ending from Chris being arrested to him being saved, as the director thought that it was too political, and when the film was released, America wasn't ready to receive the truth of racism within the justice system. Get Out was intended for a US audience around the time of Obama's presidency. Jordan Peele was known in the media, but for his comedy duo show, Key and Peele, in which they discussed movements of the time but with humour. As such, audiences were wary of his film as it was a horror and was Jordan Peele's first film. This meant that there were reservations about if the film was actually going to be scary or well put together. Jordan Peele used genre conventions of horror through including a setting of a large old house, through mise-en-scene of props of blood and gore, as well as a creepy score. This builds audience engagement as it is clearly a horror film and meets audience expectations of horror. The audience also had access to reviews, ratings, and social media advertising for the film, which also shaped the way the audience went into the film, either at home through a streaming app or at the cinemas. A modern 2021 audience can view the film in a different light with recent media of the Black Lives Matter movement, with riots in 2020 and understanding the still prevalent issue of racism, whereas the 2017 audience may be under the impression that the US is in a post-racial society and that the film highlighted the ongoing racism through microaggressions that could have been a shock. Peele confirms the ideologies of racism and post-racialism in Get Out. However, unlike Hitchcock, Peele is criticizing both of these concepts rather than conforming to them to agree with society. Peele does this through creating a film showcasing black victims and white villains, representing the inequality the US has between races in society. Peele also introduces the idea that whilst the US may have a black president, they don't live in a post-racial society, which he represents through showing microaggressions the characters present to the protagonist Chris. He also does this through showing how while the villains are in admiration of the physical aspects of black men, the white family members believe they can control them, showcasing that they believe their lives are more superior in society to the black men's lives. Get Out was produced by Blumhouse Productions and once premiered at a film festival, was distributed by Paramount after its success. Blumhouse Productions is known for taking chances on films that bigger companies aren't willing to do, as they produce low-budget films and then profit if they make it big. Therefore, Get Out was approved by Blumhouse despite being controversial in the political context. The production was fairly low in budget as it was only $5 million USD to create, which was because it was produced by a smaller company. This also meant that Peele had creative control over the film as there wasn't as large of a pressure for it to do well in box office. When Chris is shown the Armitage house by the father, the dialogue presents ideological context. Dean Armitage replies when hearing that the couple hit a deer, that one down, a few 100,000 to go. And later, those things are everywhere up here, Chris, like rats. The damage they've done to the ecology alone. Jordan Peele uses the metaphor of a deer being like black people in the film. Peele demonstrates the racism in the Armitage family and linking to white colonialism that black people are like pests, just like deer. Later in the scene, Dean is shown giving Chris a tour where he states, "There's some black mold down there," pointing to the basement. Later it is revealed that this is the place where the Armitage family holds the black men hostage. Peele is demonstrating again the racism seeing black people as inferior through referring to them as mold. Peele also shows post-racialism. In the same tour scene, Dean says, "I would have voted for Obama for a third term." Peele is demonstrating that whilst the US does have a black president that white citizens voted for, it does not mean that America is voided of racism, which is clearly shown in this statement. Just because Dean voted for Obama doesn't change the fact that he is abhorrently racist. Later in the film, Jeremy is talking to Chris about how strong he is. Through showing Jeremy's weird fascination with Chris's strength, he is again picking up on post-racialism. He is demonstrating that whilst the Armitage family talks about the physical capabilities of black men, they are replacing their lives with white persons as they believe they are superior. So whilst they admire black people, they still believe in white superiority, which Peele shows in this scene. Psycho and Get Out both display different ideologies that were present in the time that they were created. Though while Hitchcock administers to these ideologies and supports them as normal, Peele criticizes the ideological context of its time through making it present in his film. Both films broke societal norms and bended the boundaries with their audiences. However, both films are highly successful and brilliant pieces of media to this day.